Yeah, so good morning to you, good afternoon, maybe even good evening. Today is Monday, we are starting a new week. This is the week that is sending us to 9.0.5. So what is there to talk about? After our pause yesterday, where I spent procrastinating even more than usual, today there is a couple of changes worth mentioning. The change number one, although both of them are question marks, so we will see in the next few hours, because I guess we have to know before the patch goes live in NA tomorrow, in about 24 hours actually. One change is regarding Valor points. So up to now, Valor points in the PTR look like this. You get your Valor and it tells you that you have a weekly maximum to obtain as well as a total maximum to save, to stockpile. Now this was rather controversial because Blizzard announced that they were starting the stockpiling of Valor a little bit faster. Rather than starting with the originally intended cap, they gave us a 5,000 cap head start, so that you can basically spend more Valor for your first couple of items very quickly, and then eventually slow down to the pace they intend to keep you in updating items. Now, in the PTR currently it looks like this though. So there is just the total maximum, the weekly maximum is gone, and the maximum you can hold is no longer at a very small cap of 1500. What makes it even more confusing is that the total maximum is now even higher. It's not even 5000 from the start, it's at 8750. This is the equivalent of something like 6 weeks extra. Instead of starting at 5000 or the week after that, which is going to be 5750, or the second week, which is 6500, we are basically 6 weeks, we are a month and a half in the future with this number. Of course, the bigger thing here isn't that the total maximum has risen to this level, is that there is no longer a cap, a very tiny cap of 1500. The tiny cap was the first controversial part. The other controversial part of Valor was the cost of the items, because currently we do know that, for example, to upgrade a big ticket item like a two-handed weapon from 210 to 220, it takes you 3 upgrades, 213 and then 216 and then 220. A two-handed weapon costs 1000 Valor per upgrade, which means it's going to take you 3000 Valor to get from 210 to 220. And because you can get 750 per week, that's basically 4 weeks. It's going to take you a month. It's going to take you to get from 210 to 220 on a weapon. Now, the fact that you now no longer have the total maximum of 1500 as a cap means you can stockpile this Valor and save it for when you want to actually upgrade an item, because the other problem of Valor is the fact that at the end of the day, since you can't upgrade Mythic Plus pieces you already own, you have to re-loot them, you have to have them drop again. With a 1500 cap on yourself, it means you have a pretty tight window of time for you to actually loot the item before you start overcapping in Valor. You know, if you're completing, for example, plus 15 keys, it's gonna take you something like 6 Mythic Plus keys before you cap in Valor. So within 6 Mythic Plus keys, you have to loot the item you want to upgrade. Maybe you are, like many people are, in the realm of 216 to 220 item level. This leaves you with what, 4-5 items that you want to upgrade, that you want to loot and upgrade. And you just had, with this cap, with this 1500 cap, a month and a half, 6 resets worth of Mythic Plus to actually loot the item. So it would have been a pretty frustrating system. In the PTR, this is gone. In the PTR, it doesn't show this anymore. Not the weekly maximum, which would point towards you being able to grind how much Valor you want. And the total maximum you can hold on yourself is also gone. There is now just the maximum. Now, this would be a pretty significant change, coming literally 4 days after Blizzard had the PTR official notes announcement, where they pointed out there will be a 1500 Valor cap and there will be a 5000 starting cap value. So it would be pretty weird for them to change it so quickly after the official announcement of the patch, and also without saying anything so far, because this change, by the time you're watching this video, will have been out for something like 10 hours already. So we have to wait and see if this is actually an intended change or if this is just a fuck up from Blizzard in the PTR. Now, staying with Valor for a minute, there is the fact that Covenants, as you know, are going to give you Valor as well. If you want to min-max, I know this is very, very light min-maxing, honestly. You can start saving a couple of your emissaries before the reset. Both will be able to give you Valor when the patch comes in. Considering the blue chest reward emissaries give you 35 and the epic one gives you 50, at best you're going to be getting 85 head start Valor, which is pretty depressing considering the amounts of Valor you actually need to upgrade your gear. But hey, if you want to min-max, go ahead. Another point we have to make is to undocumented changes to trinket values. Now, this is also another thing that has not been pointed out in the patch notes. It has not been mentioned, not even with just a line of text, like adjusted some numbers on the trinkets or something, nothing at all. So we also have to wonder whether or not this is intended, whether or not this is going to be live or not, if it's just a mistake from Blizzard or maybe something they are testing, although that would be weird because we are basically 24 hours before the release of the patch. What would also make it weird in terms of testing or in terms of whether or not it's a mistake is that not all trinkets have been changed. There seems to have been a pretty aimed and precise retouching of certain trinkets. Trinkets in question are pretty much all the trinkets with special effects. You know, trinkets that give you a certain number that isn't a main flat stat. You know, like a flat stat trinket. Those are not being changed, the ones that have effect. So for both raids and Mythic Plus, the trinkets have been basically buffed across the board in numbers ranging from 10 to 15%. All of them, some a little bit more. So when it comes to raids, trinkets, big trinkets like Soul Igniter, like Glyph of Assimilation, you have Tuft of Smoldering Plumage for healers, you have Dreadfire Vessel, of course, Manabound Mirror also for healers, and also for tanks, the Sanguine Vintage and the Splintered Heart of Alar, all buffed in numbers. So you can absorb almost 42,000 damage with the Heart of Alar instead of 37. Dreadfire Vessel is doing 15% more damage, etc, etc. The other changes come to Mythic Plus trinkets. Now these changes though are more important if they go live, if they go like this, because as you might well know, 9.1 is going to bring a new raid. Bringing a new raid means the current items from the current raid become obsolete very quickly. The mythic version of the items you have right now are going to be the equivalent of normal difficulty raid for the next tier, which means they will become outdated as soon as you loot something from heroic, most of the time, most likely. But Mythic Plus trinkets do not. Maybe the current version you have will become obsolete, but not the upgraded version you will be looting from Mythic Plus as we go into the next tier, into the next patch, and all these items get scaled higher in item level. So we do have some big ticket items from Mythic Plus, some trinkets that are sought after pretty often. The infinitely divisible ooze for DPSers, as well as the Imperial Ordnance, is also pretty well requested. The Satchel of Misbegotten Minions, the Soul Blessing Ruby have all been buffed. For healers, things like Boon of the Archon, Lingering Sun Mote, also buffed, as well as the Blood Spatter Scale. For tanks, the barrier, the Absorb Barrier, all have been buffed in their numbers, between 10 to 20% even, some of them. And as I mentioned, it is more important because these trinkets are going to stay relevant for months and months and months. In fact, they will stay relevant for the entire expansion. Similarly to the Valor change, this was undocumented. There was no notes left by any sort of Blizzard employee regarding these changes. We will have to see whether or not it's intended and it will stick for the patch release. Now, moving away for a second for the changes of these last couple of days, the question of the day, since we are ending this week, this reset in WoW, not this actual week, how has this week been so far? I mentioned pretty much at the start of this week that this would have been a very profitable week for Mythic Plus. As you know, this was a very anticipated week based on its affixes, the ease of the affixes in Mythic Plus. And if we just go by the numbers, it definitely has. Because week 10, 3 weeks ago, Tyrannical, Bursting and Explosive, we had 1.5 million unique characters logged for just the week. In week 11, which was the week with Sanguine and Grievous, for Fortified, we had 1.4. In week 12, the Tyrannical, Raging and Quaking of last week, we had 1.3. And this week, the week with Bursting and Volcanic, we have 2.5. Of course, way more people joining in this week of Mythic Plus. There has been certainly more interest than usual, given this weekly affix setup. Next week is not going to be as easy, unfortunately. Tyrannical, Bolstering and Storming is still okay. Storming is not that bad for melee. It's annoying, but it's not that bad. And it's also nothing, basically, for ranged. And luckily, Bolstering is not going to affect Tyrannical. So your Tyrannical bosses are not going to be made harder by something like Necrotic, by something like Grievous. So it will not affect the difficulty of the bosses, unfortunately. What is going to affect is slowing down your trash. Generally speaking, in a Tyrannical week, you want to consider the trash free, very easy and quick to mow down, so you can just get to the hard part of the dungeon, the bosses. Well, Bolstering kind of slows you down, because whether you like it or not, you are basically going to give free HP to the enemies that you're leaving alive for last, so it's going to slow down your ki. It is still going to be a pretty manageable week though, But hey, you have 1 day left for this week, a couple of days left for this week, so get your pushing done, whatever push you want to aim for. Push into +10, push into +15, push into +20, whatever it is. And now we are closing the video with 2 bits of news. One is related to the Hall of Fame. So now we have gotten the blue post by Blizzard that Castelnatia Hall of Fame has been filled to completion, and with the next weekly raid reset, so tomorrow for NA, Wednesday for you, Mythic Castelnatia will be available in Cross Realm. So for those of you who are wondering why this is a good thing, people might be saying, well, how many guilds are like Cross Realm? How many people want to do Mythic progress and stay Cross Realm? The Cross Realm isn't for that, guys. Okay, it is good for pugs, of course. Now you can actually pug. We are at a level right now, given the round of nerfs, especially the last round of nerfs we have seen to Hungering Destroyer and Tanking Salvation. We are at a level where Shriekwing, Altimore, Hungering Destroyer, probably even Sanking Salvation or maybe even Inerva can be pugged. So people can go along and try to do that. What this is going to be good for is for guilds. For guilds who have already cleared Castelnatia, guilds who are starting the recruitment part of their season after the tier is over and they're waiting for the next tier. This way you don't have to get trials to transfer just to have a 1 week or a 2 week trial. This way you can just do it cross realm. This way people can just apply to a guild knowing they can just be invited to the raid, staying in the realm without having to transfer. It is much more manageable. It's more manageable for the guilds to try their trials, and it's more manageable for the trials, who will be much more willing to actually try out to guilds without having to transfer, without having to, first of all, spend money, and second of all, uproot themselves to move to a server where they're not even sure whether or not they're actually going to be staying there in the first place. That's why it's important. It's important for pugs, yes, but it is also important for raiding guilds to keep the recruitment process of raiding guilds alive and healthy in the downward trend of a season when the tier starts getting towards the, you know, the farming and the autopilot part of the season towards the end. The other part is the Artist Corner giveaway that's happening on WoWHead. I'm mentioning this just in case some of you are interested. There is going to be a giveaway where you can win a digital bust drawing of one of your characters. Or not even one of your characters, whatever character you want can be drawn by Junkie Slasher, which is an artist taking, I guess, inspiration from the Hearthstone style. If you've ever, you know, played Hearthstone, seen Hearthstone, the art style of Hearthstone, you can see here from these paintings, it's pretty much Hearthstone-like. Yeah, looks pretty good. Hey, before you pull out the whole Coomer thing, Junkie Slasher's name is Anastasia, and she's a girl. If you want, go ahead. If you always wanted one of these personalized portraits of your characters, you can leave a comment in the thread. I will be putting in the description down below on WoWHead. Comment whatever, and then you have a chance to win your own personal drawing. Now, with this, we can call a close to the video. A few interesting bits of news to report, which I guess we will see in just a few hours before the reset for NA, whether or not they're going to go live, whether or not they were intended, or if it was just a mistake. For the sake of everyone involved, I guess it is better if these were actually intended and they will go through. Trinket buffs, I mean, whatever. Sure, even if it wasn't intended, it's not going to be that bad. But as far as the Valor change is concerned, that would definitely be a much better change for Valor points. So we will see shortly. So for the time being, I will leave you. I will abandon you as usual. See you guys soon. And in the meantime, if I won, I would request a drawing of Garrosh winning the Nobel Peace Prize.